Good afternoon, mate. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not bad at all. If you could just do a small introduction for the listeners, that'd be ideal, please.
My name's Tom Lindsay. I'm still contracted at Bristol Bears to the 30th of June, but I've been playing rugby since I was 12, but professionally since I was 18. Played at Wasps, Bristol, Saris, Bedford, and Gloucester.
Okay, yeah. So you've had a substantial career within rugby, and obviously you say you're contracted until the end of this month, so all of 13 days. And then, what's the plans after that?
So I'm I've today just started working on coaching wise. So I've been doing my level three, sorry, for a while now. I've been very lucky to be coaching for the last 10 years outside of playing across all ages, genders, disabilities. So I'm looking to go. I worked with the Bristol Bears women last year and the year before, and I'm in talks with them at the moment to become their assistant head coach for the next 2 or 3 years. So that's still up in the air at the moment. I'm also looking at working PT as well. I'm doing my level 3 personal training course as well. So that's something else I'm going to venture into. I'm also doing a lot of stuff mental health wise. I'm currently mental health first aid trained as well. So I'm doing some stuff with some schools and some consultancy work with some other teams as well.
That's class. I mean, it's good to hear that you've already got things in the pipeline and lined up ready for when the career does end and things like that, because you often read stuff online and hear that people's playing careers end and then there's a short-term panic, and that's then when sometimes a mental health issue can come, that suddenly they've gone from being at the top of a game and enjoying it and then retire and then find themselves sort of like a fish out of water.
Well, yeah, I completely agree that I think in any sport, I think at any level, I think there's that feeling of I'm invincible. I'm going to play this sport for the rest of my life, and at a professional level as well. You don't usually want to think about what happens after or what if. And unfortunately, it's something that players need to think more and more of. And in my early career, as I went through and moved as I got older and moved club to club, there were amazing players falling off that cliff of retirement or injury, or very young players having to retire through injury. And I think when you're younger, when you're in your teens or early 20s and you're an academy player and you do get injured and you have to retire, I think it's a little bit easier because you might be able to go back to university. You still want like family can support you and stuff like that. So you're a little bit naive around them. But when you get a bit older, 28, 29, 30, and you think if you get injured and you've got nothing planned, I think there's a little bit of arrogance there, because you need to have, especially if you've got a family, you need to make sure you are investing the amount of spare time professional rugby players have. Look, you train Monday, Tuesday, you'll have Wednesday off. Thursday will be like maybe you've done it 2 or 3, and Friday is usually a half day, a team run, and then Saturday game day, Sunday off. You've got plenty of time throughout your 10, 15-year professional career to get a degree, get a chance to work at companies. The amount of sponsors clubs have now, you can go and speak to anyone and get your foot in the door there, even if it's work experience, working out what you want to do. But there's plenty of resources out there. The RPA help out with education grants. There are other companies as well that help out. But when you are a professional rugby player in that environment, people want to speak to you because you've got that point of difference. You play on those pitches in front of those huge crowds. You've been amongst the players that are in the limelight. People want to talk to you. When you're outside that bubble, it might last 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, 2 years max. But after that, you're just an ex-rugby player who's kind of out of the loop now. So it's important you take the opportunity when you can to speak to everyone you can do and get something under your belt. The younger, the better. Because if you do find out what you want to do young, you then can start speaking to companies and getting more and more work experience. And then by the end of your career, you can transition on your own terms and go straight into your chosen role you want to go into.
No, that is it, and it's interesting you say, like, with everything you're doing, like the coaching, the PT, and then the mental health stuff. I mean, they're all three things that link quite well together, really, because you're going to be able to apply. Obviously, for the coaching side of things, you're going to be able to apply your playing days, coaches that you've worked under. You over the years, you're going to have picked various coaches' brains, various players' brains, to then put that in your little like backpack that you're now going to be passing on to the next generation and the Bristol females team. And then with the PT stuff, again, you're going to have worked with plenty of top level strength and conditioning coaches, plenty of top level, well, you're an elite athlete at the end of the day. You're going to have worked alongside other athletes on your journey, and you pick bits up and again goes in the backpack. And then, I mean, we'll come on to it later, but the mental health side of things, again, you're going to have spoke to people are going to have spoke to you. You then take those little bits, and then when you say you've been discussing with schools and things like that, that when they come and ask these questions, you've got the answers in your armory already. You're not having to suddenly panic, suddenly finding yourself, again, come back to it, sound like a fish out of water. You can just transition into performing whatever it is that you have then chosen to do without having a panic and trying to rush and learn stuff because what someone suddenly wants to know.
No, I completely agree. You've got to take the you've got to have some kind. You have to have an element of humility when it comes to these things, because in coaching any person or teaching, or be it PT or same with mental health, you're never that finished product. You've got to make sure you keep learning, keep making those connections with different people, have different experiences, life experiences for yourself. You've had different life experiences as well, and you've been through some tough times, like a lot of people. And it's about making those connections, understanding how can I get better, how can I become a more rounded person, or more rounded coach or PT or whatever it is. And you're completely right. Everyone has got these different experiences, and it's just how can I help them and how can they help me? And when you do come across a situation where it might be a little bit tough, or some crisis management or whatever it's going to be, you have got those strings to your bow, or the tools in your toolbox to kind of counteract those things, or be able to make those aspects or scenarios a little bit more fluid, or a lot easier to go through, if you know what I mean.
No, of course, and that is it. And you say there, like, obviously we've both had little different journeys. Obviously, discuss your rugby one as well in a moment, but it's about learning from the tougher times, and then, like you say, you can then look back at that bad time now when you think, oh, I've had a really shit day today, and you look back and go, well, in reality, it might not have been that bad a day compared to what I've had. So you know how to deal with these scenarios, and you know you've got, like you say, tools in your toolbox to change things more positively and work for you going forward for the next X amount of years in your life.
No, it's definitely like the whole thing about like, was my day particularly bad today? No, it probably wasn't. And you get a sense of perspective on your life. Obviously, sometimes a bad day doesn't necessarily depend on the circumstances that happen that day. It could be just the mental state you're in, or how bad your symptoms are, or whatever it is. But the ability to reflect on a period of time is very important. Like, if I was able to reflect back on when I was younger, when I was going through my tougher times, or whenever it was, perspective goes out the window, because everything becomes completely unplausible, especially with anxiety. You start getting anxious over the most ridiculous scenarios that are just not plausible, but trying to tell your brain that in that kind of moment is very difficult. But since I've had those experiences and those reflections, and the days that are much better, I'm able to kind of talk myself back off that kind of anxious ledge, if you know what I mean. And that's definitely helped. And you're right. I would never, I don't actually regret any of the hardship, not hardship, but the harder times for me personally. I don't regret going through them, because it's made me who I am today, and it's helped me help other people just through that reflection.
No, of course. That's something that I've always stood by, is what brought on, like, what has got me to where I am today has been prompted by certain different aspects during my life. And you look back and, yeah, of course, the one major thing that changed my life, I would change tomorrow. Like, there's no shadow of a doubt about it, because of what happened. I wouldn't ever want that to happen again to anyone involved, and certainly family involved. But it has helped shape me to who I am today, and has helped me open up talking about my mental health and talking to people about it. And ultimately, as men, we are seen as, well, it's looked at, still frowned upon, that we talk openly about mental health issues and issues that we have going on, because we're supposed to have this big bravado that we are the male, alpha male, all that sort of stuff. And, oh, well, just put it to one side, man up, all these things. And they're little stigmas that need breaking down on journeys throughout life.
No, I definitely agree. Like the stigmas, the taboos. I think it's definitely a generational thing. I think if you went back to your grandfather's generation, I think the whole stiff upper lip, just keep calm and get on with it, I think was a very, very generational thing. And I think a lot of people struggle with it. You've got World War II, you've got all these kinds of things that were going on in our grandparents' life, and then you've got the Falklands, and there've been big parts of generations. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Like there is still a taboo. It's much better. Like from 10 years ago, like I said, I felt like I could talk to someone. Went to talk to someone, and I actually got shot down. That set me back years. And I think it's getting much better. But there still is this taboo about. I think employees, if someone is open and honest, say I've got anxiety and depression, would an employee definitely employ this person in a high pressure environment? If they had another candidate that didn't have anxiety depression, it'd be that whole, I don't know it anymore. I wouldn't know that. You'd have to talk to an employees in recruitment or whatever it's going to be. But I think there is still that element of, I'd probably go with the safer option, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think someone who hasn't gone through anxiety or depression or any mental health, I think they'll have that, if they're dealing with it well and going about and helping themselves, that resilience and that experience could probably make them a better team member, because they could identify different traits and different behaviors in other colleagues or friends or whatever it is to help that team go forward. So I think you're right that it's going to take years, I think, decades, I reckon, before it becomes more of a normality and acceptance, if you know what I mean.
No, I 100% agree with you there that the safe option is often what people stick to, because it's what they know, it's what they're comfortable with, and it's who they know. Although you've got someone there who is being 100% honest to a company that they want to be employed by, want a job career with, and they're saying, look, here's the scenario. I do suffer with anxiety, I do suffer with depression, but I've got to be honest with you and let you know. But that doesn't stop them, like you say, it doesn't stop them from being the perfect fit to their job, because, again, with what you said, they've got experiences and know how to manage different scenarios when they're probably mounting extra pressure on themselves to try and perform in a job whilst not getting built up with anxiety and stuff. They're managing. So again, going into a team environment, they're going to be probably slightly better spec'd to work and then look at bringing out the best in others because of their mindset and the way they potentially look at things. And then potentially someone else in that team something might be adrift with them, and you've got someone coming in who's been there, done that, still coping with it, and they go, look, mate, I don't want to come across rude, but are you okay? Like, but don't just say, yeah, I'm all right. He means like, are you okay? And then he gets something out of another team member, and you start eliminating more and more problems because you've employed someone who was out of the work comfort zone and wasn't the safe option. You probably then build a much better work environment because you've got a team that are comfortable around each other discussing absolutely anything and everything.
I think that the honesty between peers and even an employer, honesty breeds more respect for me, because if you're honest with someone, you know them better as a person. That way you can be more comfortable working next to them and also being able to tell them what's good or how they could improve. And on that mutual level of that respect, you're probably going to get much more out of each person. Whereas if you weren't saying anything at all, harboring bad feelings or not having the ability to be honest with someone is going to always set you back, and you always hold that grudge or whatever it's going to be. Paranoia might start to become implausible again. These things just make things a lot harder, and they develop that kind of barrier between peers, teammates, work colleagues, and it's kind of counterproductive. So I think honesty is so important in any kind of environment if you're all going towards the same common goal.
No, of course. And yeah, like you say there, you then, I mean, when I was initially suffering with my mental health battle and stuff like that, I became a professional liar to myself. Like, because I didn't want to believe what was happening in my head was happening. And the way I found my comforts was, well, just about every fast food outlet in the UK and any supermarket. That was where I found comfort, was gorging myself full of carbohydrates and not necessarily things that are very good for you. But it was only when someone made a passing comment to me that was like, "Oh, Lee, that shirt doesn't quite look like it fits right anymore." And I said, I sort of laughed it off and said, "Oh, well, I'm in the gym. I must be out. I'm out training my diet." But the reality was I wasn't. I was rocketing up weight, scales, and everything like that. And I think that was the comment that then made me accept what was going on, because someone else has then noticed that although all these lies I've been telling myself in my head, someone else has then spotted my coping mechanism and caught me out. So I then had to do something about it. And from then on, I went, uh, got myself a nutritionist, counsellor, things like that. And I've turned things completely round.
Like that's amazing to hear, because I completely understand how that feels. I've been through that journey as well. I was just thinking that if that person said that to me, that would have probably set me off worse. Actually, I'd have been like, "Fuck, someone knows about it. I feel terrible." Self-loathing, I still do it a lot. Self-loathing is one of my worst traits. Is just never being happy with myself. And mate, like I used to eat like I still have it to a certain extent. It's just that hole that you want to fill, be it food, alcohol, smoking, whatever it is. It's just trying to fill that with excess. Whatever I try to do is just excess. And like my weight's fluctuated throughout my entire life, like enormous to very, very thin. Like it's just, I understand it completely. And like, it's so good that you've made that positive step forward and get a counselor, get a nutritionist. And when you spoke to your nutritionist, did you tell them that you were suffering with mental health issues, or did you not say anything to them?
I was lucky. The person who's my nutritionist is a very good friend of mine anyway. But I never admitted the mental health until probably 18 months down the line. I just said, "Look, I want to come in and lose some timber." I said, I want to do it to get fitter for rugby and things like that. But the reality was I knew my issue. And then that was where the counsellor then came in. And I picked a counsellor that was 20, 25 minutes away from where I live, because I wanted it to be someone that I wasn't going to go down to Tesco's, bump into them, and then be like, maybe with a few of my mates who I may not have told at the time about what I was going through, and have to explain to them how I know this random person. But I then might bump into them over and over again with a different group of mates and have to tell a lie every time, but then say, "Oh, it's someone I work with," or, "Oh, it's someone I know from somewhere else," and then it catch me out in the long run. So I looked for someone that was a distance away, that, like I say, I wasn't just going to be walking down the high street and bump into when I'm with my mates, or go down the pub and see them sat across the bar.
No, I understand that. It's that kind of detachment you don't want. When you're going through it, if you haven't told anyone, I suppose it is hard not to talk to someone. I found that very hard to kind of admit my issues to people, and I completely understand. You want to keep it to yourself as long as it's safe, and to confide in someone until you're ready to speak to people. And going back to what you said about lying to yourself, like I created a very, very good persona who, unfortunately, because I did it for such a long time, that was one of my issues I was worried about. I spoke to my therapist and I was like, I've been this person that I thought was what everyone wanted me to be like for a long time. I'm slowly trying to find out what I'm actually like now, if you know what I mean. Now I've stopped being that person, that kind of happy-go-lucky guy who's fun on socials, he's always up for a laugh, but actually I was not doing very well like behind closed doors. So yeah, I can make things you're saying. I've experienced it and it resonates with me massively.
Of course. And obviously, two very different roles for us in terms of careers and things like that. And once I started to have counselling, I then went and told my employer, and I, to this day, I cannot thank my employer enough for them supporting me. And still now, they still ask me stuff and just check in and make sure everything's all right. And like I said, I cannot thank them enough for that. But with you going through being in a professional sporting career, how were you able to, like you say, you've got that persona there at work and at rugby, and then you go home and comfort eat, anxiety, depression, things like that. How were you able to hide it for so long and then eventually come to terms with it, if that makes sense?
I think when it's, I think it became second nature for me. It wasn't like I had to try and do it. It just became me, the person that everyone knew. The times that like times it'd get bad, it would be like I struggle with anxiety on my own. I wouldn't tell anyone, or people always would see it in training, like, or before games, but they just put that down to performance anxiety sometimes, which an element of it was, but it went. Like, I had to sit. Sometimes I had to sit in the showers for like 20 minutes. You had to do like two meditation sessions, like on like an app, like Headspace or Buddhify. I had to do that, but which isn't normal. You shouldn't be having to do that 20 minutes for a kickoff. I used to miss the referees' chat about scrums, like to check studs and that kind. I used to miss that sometimes because I was trying to sort my fucking head out. But I think it was a case of like I was known as being this bloke who loved going on socials and being around the boys and getting absolutely buckled. Which, look, I love being around the boys and stuff like that. But like the next day, I'd be in an absolute hole, and my wife would have to deal with and pick up the pieces the next day. It just became harder and harder and harder. And I still have blips every now and again. I haven't got an issue with alcohol. It's just I sometimes use that to numb the pain that I still feel sometimes. Same with food as well, where it's the excess. And unfortunately, when I get to that level, I start to self-loathe, which isn't nice to see with anyone. And as I said, I miss us to pick up the pieces, and I'm much better now. But I think, as you said, when did I kind of work it out? It was when last year in November, when I was starting to develop symptoms and started to do things I'd never done throughout the time I've been or had the mental health issues. So I wasn't actually diagnosed until last year that I actually had anxiety, depression, and an eating disorder. So I could have had it since I was 16, but obviously they're never going to know. But they know that I've had it for a very long time because it's become second nature, if you know what I mean. But as I said, last year it just became it became really, really bad. Like I've always had pretty dark thoughts, but that's just something I've just dealt with. It's almost laughable now. Like I just think about things, I'm like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous or whatever that. But I've just kind of got grown up with it. As I said, it's much better now. But like last November, I was getting really quite bad thoughts, like just trying to numb that pain that I was in. Like I couldn't fill that hole, that void I was trying to fill, and I was becoming more scatty. I couldn't talk. I was really, really stuttery when I was talking. Paranoia went through the roof. I wasn't talking to myself like in that kind of what's the word? I wasn't in psychosis or anything like that. It was a case of I was just trying to talk myself, like that's to tell myself not to fix the things that were going through my head. I was just trying to have a conversation with myself, which from a third person would look pretty mental, to be honest. But it was those kind of symptoms that I was like, it's just not right. I was on the verge of tears almost every day. Some days I would just like cry in my car before I went to training or after training. It was getting bad. And I spoke to my mate, Matt Leake, who's part of the RPA. And I said, mate, I'm just not good. He goes, mate, you haven't been good for weeks. I can tell. And I was like, look, I just need to do something. So I spoke to the RPA and they put me in contact with Cognacity and started speaking to a counsellor. And I, obviously, since lockdown, it's been put on hold because seeing a counsellor is quite tough. I've done it over Zoom a few times, but that's kind of when I noticed it was really bad. I started my meds. Didn't want to get on meds. I was scared to go on meds because of the taboo we talked about, that kind of, he's taking happy pills. And that's why that was tough. But my therapist just said, look, if you've got a skin infection or an infection in your leg, you need to take anti-inflammatory antibiotics. It's exactly the same thing. Like, it's just because it's just because it's a mental side of things doesn't mean you're not allowed to take pills to help yourself make you feel better, to get you in a better place. So I bit the bullet, and I've been on meds since November, so it's helping me a lot. I don't know how long I'm going to be on them for, but that's up to my therapist and my doctor. So that's kind of so the turning point was last November, and don't get me wrong, I still have up days and down days. I'm sure you do like yourself. It's just a way of identifying when you are like downward spiraling or getting that negative spiral, or when you do feel bad. And for me, it's just a case of if you feel like a low day or something like that, allow yourself for a period of time to feel that low or want to stay in bed. Allow yourself a little bit of time, but try and not let it last all day long. Be like, right, I'm going for a walk now. You've had your little time of feeling like shit. I'm going to go on a walk now, or whatever you need to do. If you know what triggers you and you allow it to keep triggering you and getting worse and worse and worse, you're your own worst enemy. It's not going to get better because you're not allowing yourself to get better. So it's important to talk about things, but you can't keep talking about things and not make that first step. You've got to keep making those steps forward, if you know what I mean. You're going to end up taking a couple of backward steps, but as long as you keep going forward, eventually, I think that's the most important thing.
Oh, no, of course. And I completely get what you're saying with that. Last bit, one thing that I've always said is the hardest step with any mental health battle is accepting yourself. Is once you accept it and know that you have got the issue, or sorry, I shouldn't say the issue, know that you're struggling, is you can then, like you say, you put the plan in place and you start moving forward. And obviously yours has been a long journey over your whole career. And you say, like, obviously they said to you that it's been in place for years, but because you had just learned to cope with it and deal, it only got diagnosed more recently. And again, with you saying, yeah, there's going to be backward steps, but 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. And that's what people have to remember. Rather than trying to pick out negatives in scenarios, is find all the small wins. Like I do journaling as part of mine, and it's one on Amazon. It's the 6-minute diary, or the 6-minute journal, sorry. And it's 3 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes at night. And it doesn't take a lot from your day just to write down a few little thoughts, your thought process, your goods, your bads, and things like that to move forward. And it helps. I genuinely believe it helps clear my head and help me find a little way out of the potential hole that you might be dropping into. Because although I sit here now and talk openly to you and people who listen to this, I still find it hard, if I'm feeling a bit down, to turn to a friend and ring them, because I still then worry that although I'm feeling shit, if I ring a mate and go, look mate, something's not quite right at the minute, I can't put my finger on it, I still worry that I could be deemed as a burden to them for what, although what might be going on is very minor, I still worry that it is then deemed me being a small burden to them, and they then take their mind off their day to day and start worrying about me and that kind of thing.
That's like, so I completely agree with you there. Like I think it's my biggest fear. I think it's throughout all the people I've spoken to, it's their biggest fear as well. The whole kind of I don't want to talk to you about things. I don't want to bring you down. I don't want to take your positivity away from me. And with someone who is a bit down or is struggling with depression, I think it's hard for someone who hasn't gone through depression to understand that being positive around that person or trying to make them really happy and I don't know, whatever that they're trying to do to try and bring that person up, sometimes doesn't work. It's not a case of they're upset because of a reason. It's just, unfortunately, that day it's worse than usual, and that is very hard. I know that my wife, I find it really hard talking to her sometimes. I just don't want to upset her or bring her down. And we're at a very good place now. We can talk to each other, and it's good, and it's understanding. It's like having an open conversation. Because the last thing you want to do is you talk to someone about how you're feeling, and you don't want to make it about yourself. You don't want to sound selfish or be arrogant. And that's my biggest fear. It's like all I do is talk about myself, and do you know what I mean? It's that kind of fear, I think. And what you've said there, like it's sometimes it is easy to speak to a stranger because you've got no loyalty to them, if you know what I mean. It's a case of you don't like, you're just talking and shooting the breeze. Like that's why I think open therapy sessions can work sometimes, just because you can have the same experience as someone else and actually may connect on a different level that you wouldn't do with one of your friends, for example. If some of your friends have never gone through anything mental health wise, it is very tough. I've got a few friends that are doctors, not on the mental side of things, they're more to do with anatomical doctors, and it is quite hard talking to them about mental health because they find it, I don't know if they find it, whenever I talk to them, it sounds like I'm therapizing them, and I'm not at all. I'm just trying to talk calmly and openly, and it can come across that way, and it is tough, mate. Talking to other people about it, especially your close friends, you do worry there's that little bit of judgment or that little bit of burdening effect, which is hard. And I think if you do trust your friends, I think it's a conversation to have them and say, look, if I do feel down, I would like to get to the point where I can talk to you about it, but please don't think I'm just venting to you. Like if you feel you're happy to give, I'm happy to hear how you feel after that conversation. I think having that open dialogue and that honesty and respect, like we talked about earlier, I think could even galvanize your relationship even more with your friends and be closer on a different level, if you know what I mean.
No, I 100% agree with what you've said there. Like, especially if you say to them, look, I am going to have to vent, frustrate, and I would rather you then give me an honest feedback on what I have just said to you than you just sit there and almost act like a sponge, because then you're going to go away from this conversation we are having, and what I have told you is then potentially going to lead to that burden role that we've both previously mentioned, because they're then going to go away from this and start thinking and overthinking what you've just told them, because they haven't then released any of the information or relayed anything back to you from what you've said. So they then leave, and you've then possibly got two people who are then not in the ideal headspace. One who has admitted they've got potentially something not quite right with their own headspace, and they've gone to a friend who they trust to release and have a chat about it, and the friend hasn't really given them anything back, and the friend is then going, oh shit, I'm now really worried about them, and that kind of thing. And you've then got two people overthinking something about the same situation, rather than it just being like two mates down the pub having a chat about game of rugby, football, anything like that. You sit there and you openly talk, slate, play positive, pay compliments to people about how they've played on the football pitch, rugby pitch, and then you could say, oh well, such and such played shit. But you're not doing that when someone's headspace is involved, because you are so worried that what you're going to turn around and say may then have such a negative impact that it causes a relapse. Whereas, like we have already said, honesty is the best policy where headspace and mental health is involved, because you are going to earn the respect of others, because it takes a lot of courage to tell your friends and stuff openly about what is going on. So for them to be honest back to you means 1,000 more times than anything if they turn around and tell you a pack of lies.
No, definitely. I think with regards to the honesty, I think it's important that your friends or your family, they don't need to be scared. I think because sometimes I've got friends or family that are scared to be honest with me because they think, oh my God, I don't want to upset him. I don't want him to make him spiral him into a negative. I think I'd be more upset if my friends did feel like something and they didn't tell me. I think that's the case. If they do it in a constructive way, we're talking about something, or I'd rather say, look, speak to my mate and say, look, oh, I'm feeling really bad today. What happened? Oh, I ate something. He'd be like, mate, don't worry. You've eaten something. You won't do it again. Like, you won't do it for a day. You're okay. And like, it's that sense of like, don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. The feeling's going to pass, whether it be a hug or whatever it's going to be. A bit of like TLC goes a long way. And it's about understanding how to do that and not be scared that a little bit of honest feedback is going to, in the right way, isn't going to set someone back. Whereas if you don't say anything and they've asked you to, you're like, oh mate, I don't really know what to say, and you kind of leave that conversation thinking, fuck, I said too much, or it just spirals that way. So yeah, you're right. Honesty breeds respect between friends, and also you become closer.
Oh, yeah, I agree there entirely. Like, you'd hope that, like you say, it would breed a more honest and open friendship with whoever you decide to go and chew the fat to. And although whatever you could openly admit all whatever's going on in your head, and they give honest feedback, you then end up just going spiraling off in the conversation, and possibly what you said at the start of that conversation about the mental health side of things is then you both then forget about it because you've then ended up talking about X, Y, and Z instead. And there you go, you've both cleared the air, solved whatever issue you had, and you found that, frankly, your friend didn't really give a fuck, like, in a negative way. I mean, they obviously cared and gave a fuck with regards to your headspace and mental health, but they didn't care in a negative manner that they then were like, oh my God, Lee's just come to me, said this, and I've now got to worry so much about him, because you've ended off just spiraling off and having, like I said, that normal day-to-day conversation you have with your mates just generally.
No, spot on. It's true, and I think the more people that do it, the better they'll be, and I think the closer they'll be to their friends and family.
No, yeah, that is it, and that is all you can ask for, is more and more honesty from people with regards to mental health, headspace, and things like that. And with obviously you say about seeing the therapist, and obviously being on antidepressants or whatever they are, the pills. What other coping mechanisms have you been given along the way within your journey?
So anxiety breathing helps. So if I'm feeling particularly anxious, it's just a simple breathing technique, and it's in 3 out 6, just a normal breathing technique like that, and then in 4 out 8, in what was it, in 4 out 8, in 5 out 10. You can just do 3 sets of those, 3 sets of 10, and that kind of just with your eyes closed, just kind of centers you, kind of relaxes you. And all it is just because the whole thing is when you get anxious, you start hyperventilating. You're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, to parts of your body, and you become more tight, you become very agitated. It's just kind of relaxing the body. That helps a lot. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes just, I'll be honest, sometimes I just go for a shower, go and have a shower, switch off if I can do. I use the 2 apps. I've got Headspace and Buddhify. I use those. They're really good. Good variety. Buddhify gives you a variety of how you're feeling, and it tells you if you're feeling anxious, you can't sleep, whatever it is. They give you different meditations for those individual feelings, which is really good. The biggest thing for me is exercise. I need to keep exercising, like not over exercising, not going too, but going to the gym, going on walks, go running, whatever I'm going to do. Just that kind of feeling of achieving something day by day is very important. And going back to your journal, which is really, I've used that idea before. In the morning, writing down 3 things you want to achieve from that day, and at the end of the night, reflecting on the things you've achieved. And it's exactly the same process. Every day you've got a process and a mindset going into that day. Whereas waking up feeling a bit low, I'm not going to get out of bed, or you do get out of bed, go have a massive breakfast, go back to sleep. You just got that kind of snowball effect of that day can turn into weeks, can turn into months. The next thing you know, you haven't left the house in however long, and you're not really supporting people around. You're not really putting your weight in the relationship. But these things can lead. That's the whole thing about. It's not about not helping yourself, but you need to understand what you're going through. So those are the things that I've used, and also therapy as well has helped. Talking to someone has really helped as well.
Of course, and I can second with you about the whole exercise thing, and that for me, for someone for many years who had 0% interest in ever like going to a gym or finding myself out running and doing things like that, that was sort of a turning point for me. Was then, rather than finding the comfort in foods and stuff, and that I now get my comfort from going and, like you say, just simple being out in the open space, like going out for a run, big gym session always helps, and even, like you say, just being out going for a walk and things like that. It's just that fresh air helps clear the head, and like simple things like listening to podcasts when I'm out running, or just audio books. And then away from the exercise side of things, I quite enjoy reading quite a lot. I'd set myself a target this year of reading 12 books, and during lockdown I've managed to read 7, so I might have to readdress my target.
But that's an achievement in itself. You know what I mean? You like setting targets and goals is great. It helps you get through weeks, months, whatever you need to do. Like you said, going outside, mate, getting vitamin D from sunlight, it's proven that helps dramatically with mental health. So especially you get more people that are more depressed and have more mental health problems when it comes to that kind of December, January kind of time of year. So taking vitamin D supplements from a good source is helpful as well. It just helps your mentality as well. I've been using vitamin D for a long time now, and even in lockdown, just getting outside, it makes you feel so much better.
Oh, I agree with. I mean, I've taken vitamin D for a couple of years now, and like you say, there's SADS, the seasonal, in whatever it like, seasonal emotional disorder, where people, like you say, come December, January, February, where there just isn't the daylight, sunlight, things like that. You do see people's personalities change, and I remember during this lockdown, again, I've done a nutrition course, and just a simple one with Optimum Nutrition, done their online one. And it said on, brilliant, and it just said on there that vitamin D is the one supplement that everyone should take, regardless of age, like body composition. Vitamin D does not affect, per se, any of those. Anyone from sort of 18, well, 16 probably, up to being a 90-year-old person could do with taking that, because it is the best supplement on the market for those reasons.
No, completely. And I think it's those 1%. Like if you are finding things hard through whatever you're going through, I think those little 1%, the mindfulness that can be supplemented by vitamin D or whatever you need to do, but being mindful really helps. Like I started yoga in lockdown, and I've never done yoga for my life. I've done it every day, and it's been amazing. I feel so much better about myself. I feel more efficient in my body, and it's just I don't feel stiff. I'm probably the best Nick that I've been since I was like 22, 23 now. So I'm not playing rugby anymore, which is typical. But I can move my head properly. I'm not going to miss that. I tell you that now. Waking up the next day after 80 minutes of scrummaging, that was brutal. But yeah, I like anything. Those 1% can help yourself, and there's always new stuff coming out, whether it be a placebo or just a load of shit written down somewhere. Like there's going to be elements of stuff that are going to help you, but again, you can read about stuff, you can all this kind of stuff, but if you don't start making those steps forward, there's no point in looking for those extra 1%, because it's not going to make a difference if you haven't sorted out the real problem.
No, of course, and I agree with you there entirely. You also don't know if something works unless you try it, because what works for me might not work for you. But if I say to you, "Oh look, I've tried this, I've had real positive with it," you go away, try it, and then you come back to me and say, "Well, sorry, man, that didn't really work for me." You go, "But I've tried it. I've tried a coping mechanism that someone has offered me." And like you say, it's those small percentages all add up to big things in the end. And if you can find something, like you can be recommended loads of different things, and again, whether it be something you read online, you try it and think, well, that was an absolute shock of shit, and I won't be trying that again. And then you read something and think, well, that's changed the whole way I've looked at it. But it might be that you went into one of those things feeling more positive about it because of the way you've read it, on the day that you've read it, and things like that. So it might be a complete placebo, but if it works for you, stick with it. If you think it works, stick with it and stand by it until you decide it doesn't work for you anymore, and things like that. And like you say, you mentioned yoga there. It's something, again, these are words I never thought I'd say in my life, but it's something that I am going to start doing once lockdown's done.
It's helped me, because it also gives you that aspect of mindfulness as well, that kind of relaxation before you start yoga and afterwards as well. But yeah, as you said, like trying out different things. Like for example, my first therapy session I did, I think it was 2014. it was with a guy, with a doctor, a bloke, and I just couldn't connect with him. I found it really hard, so I didn't go back to him. I then went to another doctor and another psychiatrist or psychologist. I can't remember what it was. Again, it was a bloke. I couldn't connect with him either. It was all CBT. I wasn't a big fan of it. Then I spoke to a counsellor. She was female, and I spent 8 months with her, and I found I got real headway. Then I moved away from London, and that's where she was based. And then I started with another woman I'm using at the moment. And for me, it worked. But I found out that I found it a lot easier to connect with women than I did with men, and that was very, very hard. So now, if I hadn't done those 4 experiences beforehand, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you're right. It's trial and error. It doesn't work for everyone. And if a therapist doesn't work for you, like, it's not a personal thing. Just say, look, I don't think this is working for me. I'm going to try someone else. And that's it. It's one of those things. It's not a personal vendetta or you're slagging them off. It's just a case of you need to know what's right for you. Because if you're staying with a therapist because you feel like it's going to hurt their feelings, like, you're going to end up counterproductive for yourself. So it's important, like you said, to stick with what works, and you have to try a few things to get it right.
No, of course, and like you say there, at the end of the day, you're picking a therapist or psychiatrist, psychologist, whoever it is, to try and help you get you back to where you want to be in your life and your career and things like that. So it's the same as your friendship group. Ultimately, you choose your friends. You don't stick by someone because, although you don't want to hurt their feelings or something like that, if something isn't right with a friend or in a relationship, you leave and you get yourself away from that for your own good. So like you say, if you go to a therapist, don't click after 1 or 2 and you think, well, I need to stick with them because it's their business, it's this, that and the other. Like you say, it's counterproductive. You need to find the things that are best for you and find your best coping mechanisms and who you perform best around.
No, mate, it's spot on. Like, that's exactly what's right. And I'm glad I did go through those therapists. Otherwise, I wouldn't have found the person that is working for me. So yeah, it's important that you do trial and error. You've got to crack a few eggs to make an omelette, don't you? So it's one of those things.
No, of course, there is that. And I mean, I'm going to move it on a bit. It's to try, like, it's the same within rugby. If you're not clicking with a coach, you might potentially, I don't know, you might put in a transfer request or something, because it's the same in a work. If you don't get on with your manager, ultimately you're never going to work to the best of your abilities there. So talk us through a bit about, like, your rugby career, mate, how it started and the growth.
So I started playing rugby when I was 9 at school. Played till I was 13, and then my school said I was too big to play. I think I was 15 stone at 13. It was just too big. I was huge. I was a real big boy, but like not as big as Billy Vanapola when he was a kid, but like it's kind of a similar kind of thing. But then I was quite large. I was quite fat as well, but I was playing a lot of rugby. So when I was 13, I had a teacher at school who said her son played for a local rugby team. It was Saracens Amateurs. So I joined Saracens Amateurs at 13, and I played there till I was 18. While I was there, I joined the Saracens Academy when I was 15, I think. Didn't like it there because they tried to turn me to a front rower because I was a winger at the time. I then joined Wasps Academy. I was a winger there till I was 18, and then at 18 they said, look, we'll make you a front rower. So what goes around comes around. So I ended up going to front row again. Had a trial match with them against London Irish. And then from there, at 18, I signed a contract with Wasps, and I was in the academy there for 3 years. And in that time, I went on loan to Finchley Rugby Club, was my first club. My local club was Finchley in North London. So I was playing there at 18. I was leaving school and going straight there. That was my last year of school. Then I went to Blackie. It was Sutton and Epsom when I was at university. I was at university in St Mary's. So I played at Sutton and Epsom, then went to Blackie. And then I left England to go to New Zealand. I played a year in New Zealand, which was amazing. Played for North Shore and North Harbour. Trained with North Harbour in Auckland, which was amazing. And then I came back and started playing for Wasps again. In that time, I was playing quite a lot of rugby, as I said. I wasn't academy anymore. I was first teamer. And then I had a big season that season and got selected for the England Saxons, which I wasn't expecting at all. went on tour with some absolute legends to America, 2 weeks in Denver and a week in New York, and we won the Churchill Cup. I played once, got my cap, which was one of the proudest moments of my life, wearing that red rose. I've never played for England because I would have played when I was younger, but I kept changing positions and I was changing things. I was changing to a hooker or a prop, and technically I wasn't ready to play for England 18s or 16s or 20s. Just wasn't the case. So I left. So I got back from Saxon's tour and still playing first team for Wasps. My eating had already become a problem. Like, I'd been doing it for a very long time, but I hadn't really noticed it. I just thought I used to just eat a lot. That was getting bad. Obviously, so when I was at uni, when I was 20, I got really badly injured. I hurt my neck playing against Bristol in the A-League for Wasps. Hurt my neck, so I was out for 9 months. That's when I put on a load of weight again. Got fit again. That's when I got selected for Saxon. I was at Wasps then till 2015. Left Wasps after how long was I there for? 10, 11 years I was there for. And then I joined Gloucester for 2 seasons. Then I went to Saracens for 8 months, joined Bedford for a year, which was amazing. And then I've been at Bristol for the last 2 years. So I've enjoyed loads of different cultures, loads of different coaches, some good, some bad. But good, bad, I've taken a lot of learning from the individuals I've been around and cultures and different cultures as well. Playing around the world. So I've been very lucky to do that. But that was my playing journey, really. Very, very lucky to play as long as I did and not get any major serious injuries, really. I had a few injuries, but nothing too serious. So I've looked after my body quite well, and I was very lucky, I suppose. But that was my rugby journey. Obviously, I can go in more depth about each team, but like, the podcast is only supposed to be short, mate. You don't want to be here for hours and hours on end.
No, you mentioned there in the middle there, just like when you got injured, you'd done your neck and you went away eating and stuff. I meant to touch on it earlier, but surely I know that when you go into a club, you've probably got nutritionists and full S&C plans, and you've got all your calories and everything worked out within a minor detail of your life. How difficult was it then for you to be hiding away the eating side of things? Were you then doing all the S&C with the clubs, all the eating everything at like work, and then you'd come home binge eat? Would you then find yourself having to go out for a run that night or something just to counterbalance, so that when you turned up to a club, the scales weren't going rocketing up?
So when I got injured when I was at uni, they gave me 6 months off because they're like, you hurt your neck. So nowadays, Tyone Vare, who played at Newcastle, he did the same injury about 3 years ago and he had to retire from it. So I probably should have, back then it was different. I might have had to retire from it, but it was just one of those things that they kind of got on with it. Sorry, that makes it sound bad. I don't think it was a case. I think it would have been a bit more problematic back then, if you know what I mean. So I got better from it. I was fine, but I think nowadays with spinal injuries, are like, look, let's just leave it there. It's not worth it. So because I got the time off, I hadn't really had independence out of a routine before, because I've been at school, went straight to rugby, and then I went to university, and as it was a done thing back then. Everyone went to uni, and still does now. If you don't know what to do, you go to uni or whatever. So yeah, I was just there. I was living with like three really close mates of mine. I'm still friends today. And they're obviously come from a different background as well, and we just enjoyed ourselves. And I was masking, or I probably at that time didn't think I had a problem. I thought it was normality, the way I thought was normal. I thought everyone else thought this negatively of themselves, or had these dark thoughts all the time. And I was smoking, I was drinking, I was eating everything. I was like, so I didn't have to hide it from everyone. Everyone knew I was Big Tom, and that was it. So when I came back to Wasp after I got injured, they were like, what have you been doing? I was like, oh, I've just put a bit of weight. They're like, right, you need to sort yourself out. I said, look, we're going to give you one more chance, one more year. And I did sort it out. But as you said, like going from then throughout my entire career, hiding it was really, really difficult. It was very hard because, as you said, we get weighed in every day. You just had to hope that your conditioner wasn't standing at the scales weighing you, if you know what I mean. It was really, really tough. So it was very anxious coming into the couple of days you had to weigh, or sometimes you fill out. You have an app, so you have like a Kitman app where you fill out how you slept, how you're feeling, like hamstring test, groin squeeze, and your weight. And like, if you had, once you've got the reputation of being quite lean and being professional, look, I had a good reputation of being very professional, which I am. I was very professional. I used to stretch, look after myself well, did all my analysis, and like my eating would always let me down. It was just unfortunate. It was the kink in my armor, and sorry, the chink in my armor. Sorry, and that was the thing I had to kind of deal with. I like say I get my body, you get your body fats done once a month, and I got my body fats got so low. I was so happy about how low they were that when I rocked up to the club, my nutritionist had the impression that I was looked after myself a lot. So if they went up a little bit or went down, it was all right. But like towards the end of towards that November time, I was putting on a load of weight or I was dropping loads of weight. It was never a case of, I'd never like incrementally keep it there. I'd either put on, I put on a few meals or I drop a load of meals every month. It'd be different. And my nutritionist started to realize it towards the end, and I was honest with him, and he didn't realize, like, it was my fault. I should have told him. I didn't want to tell him. It was hard. By the end of the year, I said to him, I opened up, like, mate, I'm really struggling, mate. I'm really sorry. Like, please don't. And my eating, like, when you said about binging when I got home, it was a case of, I'd eat really well in the club around games, after games. On away trips, it was always hard because you have lunch, you have a meal at lunch, you have a meal at dinner, then you have snacks before bed, and the next day you'll have breakfast, lunch, or pre-match meal, or whatever it is. So you're having loads of food, and there's always a huge spread, all kinds of things, like there's always like 2 meat options, 2 pasta options, there's pittas, there's baguettes, everything, like an actual like wedding spread is always huge. So like you could always take stuff back to your room. So it was harder on away trips to try and deal with that. And I used to get angry at myself or frustrated or more anxious because I wanted to eat more and just keep eating. But when I was at home, like my missus and I, we don't buy loads of bad stuff. Like really, we don't really buy loads of chocolates and sweets and stuff like that. So when I do like get a present or something like that, I will wait till my missus is away or out of the room, and I'll sneak eat on my own. I've been doing it for years. I hate doing it. It's like I'll eat fucking jam out of a jam jar and stuff like that, just because I don't know why. I'm trying to fill that void. I'm getting better at it. I am, but I find that when I say relapsing, it's not a case of like, I'm not saying I've given up cocaine and I've gone back to using cocaine again. It's not that at all. But like I'd use the same sense of the word. So like you go really well all week, get to the weekend, have a few jars at the weekend, a few beers or whatever it is. Next thing you know, you're off the wagon because you're then eating, like you're eating those, you feel hungover, you want to make yourself feel better at that, and you keep chasing that kind of feeling again. And by Monday, Tuesday comes down, you've put on 4 or 5 kilos, which people might think that's mental, but honestly, in this lockdown now, I'm 111 kilos today. I wanted to get down to 100. About 2 weeks ago, I got down to 106, and last week I got up to 113. Like that, day by day, it just changes, and I am trying really hard to do it, and I know exactly how to do it. As I said, I've got all the information from a nutrition course. I've been in this environment for a long time. I know what works. I know what doesn't work, and it's just keeping myself on that even kilter, which is hard because I always feel guilty trying to, if I want to try and stay healthy, I'll speak to my missus. I'm like, I don't want to eat that tonight. I don't like doing that because I feel guilty that she's like, I want to eat that. She's not. She's really good. I had a conversation the other day, but it's been going on for over a decade now. So like it really hit home to me on my 30th birthday. Like my 30th birthday was an absolute nightmare just because I was in a bad place mentally myself. But I got my sister bought me a photo album of like throughout the years, and every single picture was me either drunk with a cigarette, a pint in my hand, or I was really fat or really thin, and I found it really hard to look at. I actually haven't looked at it since, just because it made me feel so horrible about myself. And no one else saw that. It was just me. Everyone saw the book, but no one else felt like I did. Everyone was looking like Tom's having a great time. Look at him, and it was actually me. I remembered how hard it was to those times and sometimes. So I'm getting better at it, but the binge eating stuff is tough because it snowballs, and you just want to try and chase that kind of feeling of feeling whole again. You're never going to get there. You know what I mean? It's just something. It's not attainable to get back, or however happy you think it's going to be, and what I think's happy isn't happy. It's just sleepy, basically, because you eat so much, you need to go to sleep.
No, of
So
course.
that's kind of where I was at. Yeah.
I hearing that now, it sort of makes me think a lot about it, and I know what you're saying there is like finding the comfort in food, or not necessarily finding comfort, but you just feel like you're filling a void. I can often go day, eating well, getting my proteins, my carbs, everything, like use my fitness pal and this, that, and the other, like making sure that I am staying where I need to be to keep dropping weight off me. But then, like you say, I can be out of the house, I can go for a walk around my local town, and I'll just walk into a shop and just go, right, everything. And then just go and sit in my car, eat it all within 5 minutes, and then spend the next 24, 48, 72 hours going, why the fuck did you do that yesterday? Like, why did you waste X amount of pounds on all of that stuff that gives you 5, 10 minutes feeling of joy, to then have the subsequent knock-on effect of this 72 hours of you just beating yourself up, questioning why you do things, and then you put yourself in a bad space, and it's just a big snowball, really, of you beat yourself up, or you get that joy, you're at, like there, and then it just drops down the graph, and then you start, you get back on the wagon, feel good about yourself again, get back up there, feel a natural good, like, oh yeah, I looked at the scales, I put this shirt on the other day, it looked good, so then you're at that natural peak again, and then you go, well, I'm not feeling quite so good today, all right, I'll go and drill a tub of peanut butter or something like that, a pack of cookies, whatever. You then really peak, and then the whole bandwagon starts again, and it's over and over and over again. Like, like what you're saying, you can go X amount of weeks without ever having an issue, and then just completely snowball and go. I say, like you said, relapse. It makes you sound like a drug addict, but it is a relapse to a certain extent, because you have got such control of your own thoughts and things like that. I'm reading a book at the minute, The Chimp Paradox.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty impressive so far, and it talks about how like everyone has a chimp, and I mean I've named mine Fred, but it's talks about how you've got one mind that you control that is based on like facts, things that are black and white, and then your chimp picks things up from people's personalities, the environment you're in, and if your chimp overpowers you, you might as well just write it off. So you've got to learn to control the chimp, sort of thing. I hope that all made sense.
No, it does. I completely understand what you mean. Yeah. No, I completely. It's just. I think it's because it's mine such a learned behaviour. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but like I've obviously been doing this since I was about 15. I remember like doing it when I was a kid, just watching TV and eating loads of stuff. Just it wasn't my parents' fault at all. It was just the fact that I sneak eating or whatever it was, and it just became second nature to me, and it's something I just need to try and get out of the habit of. And I'll get a few months in the line, and it's just I'm getting there, and I'm getting the right help I need, and it's just keeping on that kind of straight and narrow, really.
No, of course. I'm obviously very conscious of your time and stuff. So, just one final question would be, if you could give 3 tips to someone either suffering with mental health or feel that something's not right, what would they be to help them get back on the right path, sort of thing?
So I've spoken to this with a few people now, a few school pupils, some kids, because I think if you are starting to feel anxious or a bit low, I think talk to someone, whoever it's going to be it the counsellor at school, be it Samaritans, be it Mind. There's loads of phone numbers you can reach out there online on mind.co.uk, or there's loads of different things you can go and talk about or speak to. I think, or speak to your parents. I think, be honest. If you leave it a few weeks, a few months, you could get worse and worse and worse. I think you might feel a bit scared to talk to someone. You think, oh, I'm absolutely fine. Or you just talk to someone that you're close to, that you trust. And if you talk to them and be honest, they're not going to turn you away. They're not going to say you're being silly. They'll take you seriously, and you can end up getting your help and not ending up with a serious mental health problem. You might just have a small bit of anxiety, and you might find the tools to help yourself with that. That's one big thing, is be honest and talk to someone you can do and trust someone. And the second thing for me is always be mindful of the people you're around, like be it at school, be it at work. If you see someone's going through a tough time, and I don't know, you're a colleague or you're an employer, and obviously you want to get the best out of them, loading them up with more negative feedback or just understanding how to work with. Make sure you understand, firstly, how to manage individuals. Different people don't all react to the same managerial style or teaching style or coaching style. Like one lock doesn't fit, one key doesn't fit every lock. Like, you've got to make sure you've got different keys for different locks, and that's something, it's a responsibility that's down to you as an employer or a coach, where you need to understand how to get the best out of someone. And that works for friends as well. If you see your friends a bit low or something like that, and you ask them how they're doing, if they do kind of like swipe you off and say, I'm fine, don't worry, just drop them a text later on. They might not be comfortable talking for them. Just say, oh mate, it was great seeing you today. I was wondering if we could catch up, or just want to see how you're doing. That kind of open dialogue and leaving it open. It's good to have an open question. Don't just ask like how was the last week, how was the last few days. Don't give them a direct question because you don't want to make them uncomfortable. Leave it open and just let them talk to you. Don't try and fish for anything, because you don't want to be the person who sends them a bit further down that spiral, if you know what I mean. So I think honesty and understanding your audience, be it as an employer, a friend, or a colleague, I think that's important. Those are the two big things I've learned, and I think people can take from that advice, really.
That has been brilliant, and hopefully people will have learned something from this and things like that. And all I can say is thank you very much for your time, mate.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciated it. Thank you.